sneaky manipulation to snarky revenge, what if I told you Karen is the real brains behind the mayhem? Today we're diving into her shady schemes, brutal takedowns, and yes, even a jealousy-fueled revenge. And in Plankton, her calculated support drives him to take a major risk. It's the start of a dangerous pattern, and it's not looking good for Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob is on his A-game, pulling one of his infamous tricks, popping out a Krabby Patty from Squidward's nose.
You're killing me, SpongeBob!
In one move, Mr. Krabs swats Plankton back to the chum bucket, and just like that, the supposed genius is left humiliated once again. Krabs explains to SpongeBob that Plankton is his arch-nemesis, though frankly, arch-nemesis is a bit generous considering Plankton's bloody success rate so far. But does Plankton give up? Nah. And Karen's right there supporting his scheming and offering up ideas. Later that night, while the Krusty Krabs all locked up, SpongeBob's heading home blissfully unaware of the microscopic menace lurking in his path. Plankton's there with his next big plan, probably inspired by a certain AI wifey, a little emotional manipulation. The guys resorted to playing the friend card, acting like he and SpongeBob are practically brothers in their shared invertebrate status.
Well, we're both invertebrates, aren't we?
I guess so.
He even hands SpongeBob a golden spatula. Yep, bribery's in the playbook now. Thanks, Karen. But when Plankton casually drops that he wants a Krabby Patty for his birthday, SpongeBob's not having shit. Cut to later that night, and here's where things get genuinely disturbing. Plankton sneaks into SpongeBob's house, climbs into his brain, and takes over like some sci-fi horror plot. This isn't just nasty behavior anymore, this is straight-up mind control, with Plankton sitting in the driver's seat and poor SpongeBob helplessly watching his body turn into a Plankton puppet. It's honestly nightmare fuel, but apparently Plankton thinks it's all in good fun. Plankton's got the reins, parading SpongeBob around Bikini Bottom like he's showing off his latest trophy. He stops by Squidward's house just to toss out some insults, then swings by Patrick's rock and literally tosses his best friend aside. Plankton's ultimate goal? March SpongeBob into the Krusty Krab, swipe a Krabby Patty, and finally claim victory. And as he forces SpongeBob to snag a burger and drag it back to the chum bucket, Plankton's all smug, practically drooling over his imminent success. But in a twist, SpongeBob's own love for the Krabby Patty is what saves him. As he's forced closer to Plankton's Krabby Patty analyzer, SpongeBob starts to monologue about the burger's beauty and flavor in the most dramatic, romantic way possible. Plankton, in a rare moment of raw hunger and bad impulse control, jumps out of SpongeBob's brain to dive right onto the patty. Only he bounces off it and lands smack inside his own analyzer, trapping himself in his computer screen.
Plankton, 1% evil, 99% hot gas.
Plankton, who can evidently plan for anything except his own stupid moves, now finds himself locked in a digital cage. Maybe you should have consulted your AI wifey before jumping into this crazy scheme, Plankton. SpongeBob, totally unfazed by the chaos he just endured, strolls home like it's all in a day's work. Plankton, left screaming after him, begging for some fries as a consolation prize.
I'll settle for some fries!
Plankton, he never wins, yet somehow he's always back for more. But one has to wonder, with Karen witnessing every single one of his failed schemes and embarrassing outbursts, maybe she has a plan of her own. Meanwhile, over at SpongeBob's, it looks like his next wake-up call will be a bit of a biohazard alert in The Fungus Among Us. Our episode kicks off innocently enough, with SpongeBob asleep and blissfully unaware of the mini biohazard lurking on his floor. Just as SpongeBob's attempting damage control, Patrick arrives, perfectly timed to make everything worse, as per bloody usual. When he sees the fungus spreading across SpongeBob's head, does he suggest calling a doctor? Of course not. Instead, he tells SpongeBob to scratch it like his life depends on it, assuming this will make it magically go away.
Scratch it like there's no tomorrow!
Good idea!
Naturally, Patrick's genius advice has the opposite effect. The fungus multiplies, covering SpongeBob faster than you can say bad hygiene. Before long, he's itching and flaking all over town like some kind of walking, highly contagious sponge of doom. SpongeBob eventually stumbles into the Krusty Krab, thinking he can just go about his shift as if he isn't literally shedding spores. But the fungus ain't going quietly, almost like it's been engineered to be a sticky bastard. He tries to scrape some off into the trash, and it grows back twice as fast, as if he's got some kind of living mold infestation that's taking control. By this point, SpongeBob's basically a walking petri dish. Meanwhile, a bit of stray fungus lands on Squidward's head, and he has the bright idea to scratch it. It's the start of an epidemic that soon spreads to Old Man Walker, and before long, the whole town is about to be hit by the ick. It's like a certain AI wifey had the bright idea to infect the Krusty Krab's only fry cook with the ick. With SpongeBob under lockdown back at home, the SWAT team bubbles him up to quarantine him properly. A whole biohazard bubble around his pineapple, because he's now Bikini Bottom's public enemy #1, it seems. Did we forget about the teeny villain and his robot wife? Patrick shows up, still totally oblivious to how serious this has gotten, and decides it's the perfect time to play some pirate wrestling with his old pal. In a move no one saw coming, but probably should have, he pops SpongeBob's containment bubble, and before you know it, Bikini Bottom's finest biohazard is unleashed yet again. Back at the Krusty Krab, the fungus spreads like wildfire thanks to Squidward, who accidentally contaminates pretty much every Krabby Patty in sight. Even the health inspector has had enough at this point, calling out Krabs for pretending everything's fine just to keep the restaurant open.
The commotion, my dear Krabs, is regarding the hygiene standards of your eating establishment, which appear to be inadequate.
Just as everyone's starting to panic, SpongeBob arrives in his bubble looking like a walking mushroom farm. The health inspector snaps, inciting the crowd to turn on SpongeBob, blaming him for their impending fungal fate.
Is that what you consider clean and disease-free, Krabby? I say we ransack this greasy disease shack. Who's with me?
Turns out Gary's a bottom feeder, and apparently flesh-eating fungus is part of his daily diet.
He's just doing his job, SpongeBob. He's a bottom feeder, remember?
One by one, he devours the ick off everyone, curing them on the spot. Of course, Krab smells an opportunity here and starts charging the infected Bikini Bottomites $5 a head for a Gary D. Ick special.
Now can I get you a Krabby Patty?
In light of today's events, that notion is crass and offensive. I'll take 2, please.
The townsfolk line up, practically throwing their money at him, desperate to be rid of the fungus. And there's Gary, saving the day by munching away, blissfully unaware that he's just become Bikini Bottom's medical marvel, and all thanks to Mr. Krab's knack for squeezing a buck out of any situation. For all of Plankton's wild schemes, watching Krabs make a quick buck off an accidental fungus apocalypse might just be his most humiliating move yet. You've gotta wonder, though, if Karen's got anything to do with this besides taking notes. But in Algae's Always Greener, she proves she's a mastermind at planting ideas. One casual suggestion, and suddenly Plankton's out here plotting a total life swap.
I wish I could be successful like Mr. Krabs.
So Karen bluntly asks,
Then why don't you just use that switch lives just to know what it's like a lager fire thing you built last Tuesday?
Thanks to Karen's suggestion and better memory, Plankton soon wakes up in an alternate universe where he's taken over the Krusty Krab, and naturally he goes by Mr. Plankton now. With his new identity, he struts around in Krabs' clothes and office feeling like he's hit the jackpot. But life as Mr. Krabs isn't all Krabby Patties and money piles. For starters, Plankton's new employee, alternate universe SpongeBob, is clingy and desperate for feedback. When Plankton casually critiques him for using
The sauce. I don't know. You're using too much sauce, okay? Review's over.
SpongeBob spirals into emotional meltdown mode, taking constructive criticism to a whole new level of distress. To keep his new model employee happy, Mr. Plankton reluctantly promotes SpongeBob to co-cashier, which annoys alternate universe Squidward enough that he quits on the spot. Squidward storms off only to be immediately roped into fry cooking, a role he detests even more than cashiering. And then there's Pearl. As Mr. Plankton's daughter in this universe, she shows up begging for an allowance raise. When Plankton hands her a single dollar, she cries in outrage, adding more chaos to his new dream life. As if things couldn't get worse, a customer arrives complaining about Squidward's miserable attempt at cooking, and SpongeBob collapses over a slightly off order.
What? It's just an ordinary Krabby. Oh my goodness!
Mr. Plankton, barely keeping it together, begs everyone to stop whining, but his reprieve is interrupted by a loud siren. Turns out the siren warns of a Krabby Patty formula threat, and who's behind it? none other than alternate universe Eugene Krabs. In this dimension, Krabs has taken on Plankton's former role as the obsessive, miserable thief, except he's now 100% stark naked. Chaos ensues as SpongeBob, equipped with a clothes cannon, blasts Krabs with an assortment of undergarments, eventually restraining him with a brassiere as the entire restaurant cheers with a victory screech.
Oh, you got me!
Krabs, furious and barely clothed, vows to Mr. Plankton that he'll steal a Krabby Patty someday, even if it means raiding the Krusty Krab daily. This level of drama and insanity proves too much for Plankton, who quickly realizes that Krabs' life might be even more intolerable than his own. So he screams, strips off Krabs' clothes, and slams the reset button on his transmogrifier. Plankton returns to the chum bucket face to face with his holographic meatloaf and digs in like he's won a 5-star meal. For Plankton, suddenly, that pathetic little meal doesn't seem so bad. In the end, Karen's clever suggestion didn't lead him to happiness or riches, but it did show him just how disastrous Mr. Krabs' life really is. And it's pretty clear that Karen's advice might have a little more bite than Plankton ever realizes. Meanwhile, her husband's latest master plan, let's just say it's less brains, more burglary, in The Great Patty Caper. The Great Patty Caper, an episode that's part train heist, part culinary crisis, and all-around plankton mischief. Karen's husband is back at it, hopping on the Rob SpongeBob blind train. Literally. Karen's probably at home watching the whole disaster on some hidden live stream, sipping oil tea and thinking, he just never learns, does he? The episode opens with SpongeBob at the Krusty Krab discovering that they've officially hit rock bottom. The freezer is completely empty of Krabby Patties. 0 patties. Dude, you'd think he'd found a ghost in there with the way he starts screaming. Mr. Krabs jumps in and they both try to remember how to make the patties, only to have a momentary lapse in memory. So the recipe they've guarded with their lives, poof, temporarily lost to the vault. Krabs hands SpongeBob the key to their most sacred treasure, the recipe itself, and sends him, plus Patrick, on a train ride to the bank. Now, you know this is Bikini Bottom, so a simple train ride to the bank can't possibly go smoothly. Sure enough, sometime along the way, the key goes missing.
That, my dear Patrick, is the key!
SpongeBob and Patrick go full detective mode, frantically searching for the culprit. First up, Plankton. The little schemer shows up like he just happens to be taking a casual cross-country train trip. Patrick searches him, but turns up empty-handed. No key, no Krabby Patty formula, just Plankton looking fishier than ever.
He's clean.
See what I did there? SpongeBob and Patrick go chaos mode, stopping the train to interrogate the passengers. They first try a nanny and her baby, which leads to the weirdest twist. The baby's diaper contains a jewel swiped by a band of triplets disguised as the nanny. A jewel heist inside a Krabby Patty heist. This train's got a lot going on. SpongeBob and Patrick aren't giving up. They hunt down their next suspect, a shifty-looking butler named Orin J. Ruffy.
The butler always commits the crime.
Problem solved? Not so fast. Plankton, of course, swoops in and snatches the key right from under them. I wonder if this was his grand plan, or if Karen once again gave him the idea. Not to be outdone, SpongeBob turns himself into a human hang glider, don't ask, to chase after Plankton as he speeds away on the train. They end up racing through the train cars in a scene that looks like it was ripped from an action movie, running from the caboose to the locomotive with Plankton always just one step ahead. Desperate to shake them off, Plankton detaches the main engine from the rest of the train, stranding SpongeBob and Patrick in the locomotive. This means they're now in charge of stopping it. Yippee! And in a typical Patrick fashion, he helps by breaking the brake lever, sending the train into a complete out-of-control nightmare.
You broke the brake!
He goes through several harebrained ideas to try and slow it down, including putting a heavy object on the tracks, which only causes the locomotive to flip wildly. They're practically off the rails, but somehow they manage to get the wheels back on track, just in time to not crash into a retirement home. Patrick, in one last moment of brilliance, mistakes the throttle for a brake button and snaps it in two, making the train rocket forward at full speed. Meanwhile, Plankton's been inching his way toward the vault, and he's nearly there.
Come to Papa!
Only to be caught by Mr. Krabs at the worst possible moment. And there you have it, another Plankton fail, an epic train wreck, and Karen, somewhere, probably watching all of this unfold like it's her own personal soap opera. And in fun, she guides Plankton straight into SpongeBob's heart, only to tear it to shreds. This time, he's blasting his way out of the Krusty Krab with a laser, only to get chased down by our spongy boy who ultimately saves the day. But instead of celebrating his victory, SpongeBob looks back at a defeated Plankton and, oh boy, feels bad for him. That's right, the overly empathetic Sponge decides that what Plankton needs isn't punishment, it's a friend. And it's here that Karen steps in to give Plankton some dangerous advice. When SpongeBob offers Plankton a shot at friendship, Karen, the mastermind herself, sees this as a perfect opportunity. Karen's helpful advice? Befriend SpongeBob, play nice, and use him to finally get that precious Krabby Patty recipe. Cold? Absolutely. And Plankton, being all too eager to redeem his bruised ego, buys into her idea instantly. Next thing we know, they're off to Jellyfish Fields, where SpongeBob begins by saying,
It's not about winning, it's about fun.
and then serenades Plankton with the now iconic Fun Song, blissfully unaware of the betrayal brewing inside him. At first, Plankton sings his own twisted lyrics about chaos and destruction, but then, miraculously, he loosens up and starts to genuinely have a good time. With SpongeBob by his side, he almost seems to forget his evil agenda. Almost. Meanwhile, Krabs watches in horror, convinced that this sudden buddy-buddy situation is just too good to be true. And of course, Mr. Krabs is right. Though Plankton tries to resist, when they're back at the Krusty Krab, he takes the bait, literally. Mr. Krabs dangles a Krabby Patty in front of him, and all of Karen's scheming advice floods back to Plankton. In a moment of weakness, he swipes it and hides it in his pocket, thinking he's pulled off the perfect heist. The betrayal hits SpongeBob hard, though, when Krabs exposes Plankton in the middle of a packed movie theater, having SpongeBob reach right into Plankton's pocket and pull out the Krabby Patty in question.
I can't believe this.
SpongeBob's devastated, feeling used and betrayed, while Plankton tries to save face, claiming that he really wanted friendship, before making a bloody run for it. In true Plankton style, though, the getaway goes horribly wrong. He slams right into the concrete wall behind the movie screen, ending up flattened and pattyless. With Karen's twisted plan in shambles and SpongeBob's trust shattered, the friendship officially crashes and burns. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob head back to the Krusty Krab for a fresh, betrayal-free burger, leaving Plankton to get flicked away like a nuisance onto Bubble Bass's hand, where he's mistaken for a jelly bean. It's another day, another flop for Plankton, thanks to Karen's icy encouragement. After all, why should Karen waste her circuits on this mess of a town, unless it's to watch Plankton's latest victory spiral into disaster? Get ready for Plankton's Regular, where the customer of his dreams turns out to be his worst nightmare. Our story begins in the dark, desolate Chum Bucket, where Plankton's so desperate for a sale, he's one existential crisis away from trying to sell chum to himself. But then entered Nat, a seemingly clueless fish who stumbles in and actually orders a chum stick. Plankton practically faints at this rare miracle, serving it up with all the enthusiasm of a Michelin star chef. The next day, Plankton waits by the door, clutching a chum stick like a kid waiting to be picked up from soccer practice. Hours pass, and just as Plankton's about to lose hope, Nat shows up, chows down, and declares he's officially a regular. Plankton is overjoyed, so much so that he decides to rub it in Krab's face, marching into the Krusty Krab with all the swagger of a guy who's convinced he's won the damn lottery. Krabs, unimpressed, scoops Plankton up like a stray fry, mocking him for celebrating a single customer. But then, plot twist, Nat walks right into the Krusty Krab and requests a chum stick from Plankton right in front of Krabs.
I'll see you later, loser.
Nat might be the only customer, but he is loyal, and Plankton parades him out with enough attitude to make Krab's blood boil. This naturally sends Mr. Krabs into a full-on meltdown. He's so desperate to reclaim his monopoly that he assigns SpongeBob to convert Nat back to Krabby Patties, going so far as to have him literally shove a Krabby Patty in Nat's face, which doesn't go over so well. This is seriously sus. Does this Nat guy have no taste buds? Just when it seems like Plankton's got the upper hand, Karen pops onto the screen to casually announce that Nat's on his way back to the chum bucket, wallet at the ready. But in classic Karen style, there's a twist. When Nat arrives, he throws his money at her and announces he's officially done with Chum because, surprise, it landed him in the hospital twice for stomach pumping.
I have eaten 10 of those things, and I've already had to go to the doctor. Twice!
Oh, so he does have taste buds. And with that, Plankton's dreams of entrepreneurial glory disintegrate. He's devastated, calling himself
The waste of a lower life form.
to which Karen, how's this for heartless, tells him to,
Ah, there he goes again. Cut it out, Plankton.
but don't worry, Plankton isn't the only one left down in the dumps. Krabs and SpongeBob are still trapped under Plankton's security spoons. But Krabs, petty as ever, decides to stick around and bask in Plankton's misery, laughing like a maniac while SpongeBob just watches in silence. And there you have it, folks. Karen, the true mastermind, pulls the strings to remind Plankton that even his brief moment of triumph was just an illusion. And Karen's ready to up the ante. Time for SpongeBob's Last Stand, where Karen pushes Plankton's schemes from petty mischief to full-blown chaos in Bikini Bottom. The episode really showcases how Karen might be the true mastermind behind Plankton's most diabolical schemes, subtly steering him towards actions that go way beyond just stealing the Krabby Patty formula. If Plankton's got a dark side, Karen's the one casting the shadows. It all starts with SpongeBob and Patrick having a magical moment at Jellyfish Fields as they serenade the jellyfish in one of those classic blissfully unaware SpongeBob scenes. But their bubble of harmony bursts when they spot a huge billboard announcing the construction of the Shelly Superhighway right over Jellyfish Fields.
Superhighway? Do you know what that means?
SpongeBob, in full Save the Environment mode, goes into town to warn everyone about the ecological disaster waiting to happen, but he's met with a big ol' shrug. Everyone's more concerned with their Krabby Patties than a highway flattening the local wildlife. Krabs initially thinks the highway could bring in even more customers for the Krusty Krab. That is, until he realizes the mastermind behind this plan is none other than Plankton. Her influence here is subtle but powerful. She's the one feeding Plankton's ambition, even if it means trampling a beloved Bikini Bottom landmark. When SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs confront Plankton, he smugly informs them that everyone's already approved the project. So what do SpongeBob and Patrick do? They rally against the highway, turning to protest tactics like singing their new anthem,
All we are trying to say is give Jellyfish Fields a chance.
but their rally flops spectacularly. The townsfolk heckle them, and Nat even smashes Patrick's tambourine in a declaration of the highway or bust. The police eventually haul SpongeBob and Patrick off in what feels like a twisted nod to activists being squashed by the system. It's clear that the power Plankton holds is magnified by Karen's calculated manipulation. Every time he gets closer to total domination, she's there, half smirking, giving him just the push he needs to go further. As the highway rolls out, so does the destruction of Jellyfish Fields. Plankton's bulldozer plows through the place like it's nothing, while Karen sits back, no doubt relishing the havoc her better half is wreaking. Soon the lush fields are just concrete, and Bikini Bottom's left looking like the aftermath of a citywide dumpster fire, while the highway's arch looms over the Krusty Krab. Krabs, seeing the writing on the wall, even considers shutting down the Krusty Krab for good. But when the jellyfish finally snap and start wreaking havoc on Bikini Bottom, even Plankton's smug exterior begins to crack as the jellyfish swarm the chum bucket, giving him a first-hand taste of the mayhem he's unleashed. But we're left with a sneaking suspicion. Is Plankton's evil just an extension of Karen's ambition? This episode subtly shines a light on that eerie possibility, showing that Karen might be the real driving force behind some of Plankton's most ruthless plans. And Karen's support isn't just standing by anymore. In Chum Bucket Supreme, she's about to unleash some serious power moves that make her intentions clear and maybe even a little sinister. From the get-go, Karen isn't interested in mere survival for their business. No, she wants domination. And if she has to turn Plankton into a mini dictator to get it, so be it. The episode starts with two customers almost gracing the Chum Bucket with their business. Plankton's elated, thinking he's finally cracked the code to success, but it's a false alarm. They only parked there because the Krusty Krab's lot was full. Classic. Here's where Karen steps in, suggesting Plankton actually advertise his product.
Advertise your product, of course.
This might sound like simple business advice, but Karen's influence has this no-nonsense, do-or-die edge to it. She wants results, and she wants them now, setting the stage for a bit of authoritarian marketing. Following her advice, Plankton goes big and bold with his new sign, "Chum is metabolic fuel," but this one's a little too sophisticated for the average bikini bottomite. Enter Patrick, who promptly proves the sign's flaw by overheating his brain cells trying to read it. In true Patrick fashion, he rearranges the letters, accidentally creating the nonsense slogan, "Chum is fum." And guess what? That's all it takes to start a full-on bloody chum revolution. Karen seizes on this moment and convinces Plankton to hire Patrick as the slogan manager, effectively handing over creative control to a guy who can't even spell slogan. While all this is going on, Mr. Krabs is convinced Plankton's got some inside scoop on his secret formula. He and SpongeBob go full espionage mode, but instead of a Krabby Patty recipe heist, they discover that all this hype isn't about flavor, it's about that infuriatingly catchy slogan. But he can't argue with the results. Karen's strategy has officially turned Plankton's clueless slogan manager into a gold mine for business, even though the food remains as revolting as ever. Thanks to Karen's iron-fisted control and Plankton's blind loyalty, the Chum Bucket's on top for once, even attracting a hockey team, the ultimate bikini bottom status symbol. Just when Plankton thinks he's the king of fast food world, Patrick, burnt out from his intense marketing gig, tries to quit. In the end, Patrick ends up at the Krusty Krab with a new slogan, "Krabby Patties are fum." And of course, the customers come flocking back. With her relentless ambition, Karen may have temporarily turned Plankton into a force to be reckoned with, but ultimately, her obsession with success left him alienating the very customers he'd fought so hard to get. It's a cautionary tale. Under Karen's watchful eye, Plankton's path to greatness will always come with a dark side, often costing him more than he gains. So what does Plankton do after Karen's relentless help? Create Karen 2, of course! If she wasn't holding a grudge before, this might just push her to breaking point. Ah, Karen 2.0, the episode where we see Karen's not-so-friendly side come to light. And honestly, it's both unsettling and oddly satisfying. Right from the start, it's clear Karen's more than just a background wifey gadget. When Plankton casually reveals he's made Karen 2, you can almost feel Karen's circuits sparking with rage. She's had it with his ungrateful attitude, and we can see a possessive side of Karen we haven't seen before.
I've been replaced!
She's not about to let some newer model just waltz in and replace her after all she's put up with. So Karen, trying to keep her shit together, goes to Plankton with her latest creation, a suspicious-looking chum pot pie. But instead of appreciating her effort, Plankton immediately criticizes her, declaring that her memory is full and that this new model will solve all these problems. Harsh, bro. I'ma say it. Toll. Karen tries to sap some sense into him, but he's ready for her outburst, and Karen 2 swoops in, shutting Karen down and stealing the spotlight. Just like that, Karen's thrown out, discarded like yesterday's code. Things take a turn when SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs find Karen dumped in a free box. While SpongeBob senses something fishy, Krabs is far too hyped by the idea of anything free to care. He installs her at the Krusty Krab, where, after rebooting, she quickly realizes she's been replaced by Karen 2, and Plankton's already romancing his flashy new model.
A computer's supposed to emote?
Heartbroken and seething with jealousy, Karen makes a very dark promise that she'll never go back to him. The next day, Mr. Krabs, the dang cheapskate, hires Karen as a free cashier. It's a win-win for everyone, except for Squidward, who's immediately demoted to bathroom duty. But even this cushy new gig isn't enough to distract Karen. When a customer asks for a Krabby Patty, she snaps like a, Karen, showing she's really in no mood to take orders. And right on cue, Plankton and Karen 2 arrive at the Krusty Krab with Karen 2 hilariously malfunctioning at the door, unable to enter since Plankton didn't think to program her with arms. Who needs arms when you're a trophy wife anyway? Karen and her shiny new doppelganger quickly devolve into a heated argument.
Well, if
if it isn't Little Miss Homewrecker.
And Mr. Krabs sees this as a golden opportunity to make some money setting up a full-blown robot showdown. But in classic dramatic fashion, her power drains just as he finishes off her replacement, leaving Plankton scrambling to revive her. In a moment of genuine regret, he finally realizes what he almost lost and promises he'll never take her for granted again. In the end, he swaps out Karen 2's battery to bring Karen back, and they return to the chum bucket seemingly stronger than ever. Of course, Krabs decides to repurpose Karen 2's shell, slapping it on Squidward and forcing him to play robot cashier.
Keep it up, Mr. Squidward. The kids love robots.
It's a hilarious and absurd ending to a battle of wills, and a warning to Plankton. Karen isn't just some replaceable program, she's the real power behind the chum bucket. If he underestimates her again, who knows what chaos she'll unleash. But if you thought that was bad, just wait. Karen's will be proving she's not just along for the ride in Plankton's army. This time, she's ready to be the spark that lights the fuse. The episode kicks off with Mr. Krabs gloating about the silver anniversary of Plankton's endless failures, but Plankton won't miss a chance to crash the party. He rolls in with a robot disguise. Unfortunately, his grand plan falls apart instantly. After hopping out of a dollar bill and demanding the formula, it dawns on him that he didn't think things through and has no actual threat lined up. Mr. Krabs, unimpressed, dumps him down the toilet like last week's chum.
You need to do is surround yourself with muscular, tough guys who will do whatever you say.
You could even say she's the mastermind here, encouraging Plankton to escalate things in a way he's never tried before. So Plankton ends up on a recruiting mission at a sketchy nightclub. When that flops, it hits him. He's got family. Thousands of relatives, actually, scattered all over the ocean, and surely some of them must be as scheming and ambitious as he is, right? Wrong. When Plankton's cousins show up, they're all, well, let's just say the evil genius gene didn't quite make it through the family tree. Plankton realizes he's dealing with a bunch of low IQ, plaid-wearing rednecks. But in typical Plankton fashion, he adjusts his plan, promising his ragtag army unlimited root beer in exchange for their help. And here's where it gets dark. Karen knows full well these relatives are clueless, yet she's fine with enabling Plankton's delusion. Maybe she knows it's all going to blow up in his face, but she's more than willing to watch it happen. As the Krusty Krab is closing up, Plankton and his family of wannabe villains storm the place. They trap Mr. Krabs and Squidward in the bathroom and finally get their hands on the safe. Plankton's triumphant moment arrives as he clutches the formula, ignoring Mr. Krabs' cryptic warning about secrets.
There's some things in this world that weren't meant for mortal eyes.
Krabs, barely containing his laughter, lets him have that "I warned you" look, as Plankton shrieks in terror and bolts out of the Krusty Krab, screaming for his life, with his cousins trailing behind him, all equally horrified. Well, except for Clam, who couldn't read the recipe anyway.
Hey, why ain't you running?
I can't read.
Get out of here.
In the aftermath, Squidward actually asks if Plankton is the secret ingredient. Mr. Krabs, smirking, reveals it's all just a fake recipe to scare off Plankton. The real recipe? Hidden in a place no one would think to look. Except Squidward immediately figures it out.
Let me guess. It's at home, under your mattress.
With that, Krabs lets out a final scream and bolts home, cursing Squidward's sharp observation skills. In the end, Plankton's army reveals how far Karen is willing to go to support Plankton's dangerous ambitions, no matter how absurd or risky. It's not just loyalty, it's her active complicity, enabling him to keep chasing his wild schemes even when they're clearly doomed to fail. Karen's role here hints at something darker, a side of her that delights in Plankton's obsession, almost as if she's feeding off his chaotic energy and encouraging his worst tendencies. But hey, I'm just a guy who likes cartoons. Catch you in the next video.